My name is Emily Cross, and my sister tried to kill me with crushed almonds in a slice of cake. A year later, I stood across from her in a courtroom, calmly watching the color drain from her face as the judge said the words, "You owe your sister $220,000. I didn't flinch. I didn't gloat. I just turned and walked away, dignity intact, justice delivered. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love you, stay with me, because this one still makes my hands tremble. The hotel ballroom glittered like a snow globe come to life, silver garlands strung from ceiling beams, crystal icicles hanging off centerpieces, even the hors d'oeuvres sparkled with edible glitter. It was supposed to be the company's biggest holiday bash in a decade, and I'd spent the whole week dreading it. Downtown Chicago. 14 degrees outside, heated rivalry inside. I had just finished laughing politely at a manager's pun-laden speech about Q4 performance when I caught my sister, Vanessa, weaving her way toward me through the crowd, champagne in one hand, trouble in her eyes. Vanessa Cross. 5 years younger, sharper dressed, louder voiced, and apparently incapable of being anywhere without making sure I left feeling a little smaller. Am I lie? She sang, raising her glass as if we were best friends reunited by fate rather than forced into the same building by nepotism and a shared surname. Everyone, may I have your attention? I didn't even have time to brace myself. She clinked her glass with the edge of a nearby tray, smiling with her whole face, but not her eyes. Executives turned. Conversations hushed. I felt the chill of air conditioning on the back of my neck. I just want to propose a quick little toast, Vanessa said sweetly, spinning a circle of charm, to the smartest, hardest-working data lead in the building, who also happens to be deathly allergic to nuts. The room tittered. And attention, apparently. My stomach sank. Be careful, she continued, raising her glass higher. Emily's allergic to nuts and attention. Guess it runs in the family, just not the charm. Laughter rippled through the room. Not everyone, but enough. A couple of junior analysts winced. Mr. Langford, the CEO, raised an eyebrow. My hands clenched around the glass of seltzer I hadn't touched since the first awkward hour of mingling. I gave a small, tight smile and stepped back from the group. She wasn't done. I mean, Vanessa laughed, imagine being that allergic. You basically have to live like the world's a landmine. No trail mix, no pesto, no fun. I left. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic exit. Just a slow turn, a short walk. Heels clicking across the marble floor as the weight of 60 stairs bore down on my spine. I made it as far as the hallway outside the ballroom. Leaned against a column. My cheeks were burning, my breath shaky. I could still hear her laughing behind me. My name was on the data operations banner for that night's quarterly recognition slideshow. I had led the company's largest system migration in a decade. But none of that mattered the second my sister opened her mouth. She didn't just humiliate me. She weaponized a part of my identity I didn't choose, something I have to manage to stay alive, and used it for a punchline. And the worst part? No one stopped her. One executive chuckled. Another murmured something about siblings being siblings. But not one person said, that wasn't okay. And so I stood there under chandeliers and polished floors, surrounded by colleagues and strangers and the sound of distant holiday music, feeling like the loneliest person in the room. The party pulsed on. Glasses clinked. Deals were toasted. My face cooled. But something changed that night. Not just how I saw Vanessa. How I saw myself, because I wasn't just embarrassed. I was done. And I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not this time. Back inside the ballroom, the night rolled on like nothing had happened. The band played jazzy renditions of holiday classics. The chocolate fountain gurgled merrily beside the dessert station, surrounded by trays of delicate pastries. Coworkers swirled champagne and smiled at each other like the world hadn't just tilted under my feet a half hour earlier. I was doing my best impression of someone who wasn't unraveling. Dana from HR had spotted me by the mistletoe display and insisted I join her at the dessert table. You can't sulk through the entire party, she said gently, handing me a plate. Come on, this cake is unreal. I forced a smile. I was tired. So tired of pretending to be okay. I didn't want to eat, but I also didn't want to draw attention. I chose the smallest slice of chocolate layer cake and stood awkwardly beside Dana as she introduced me to the CFO, Howard Kim, a broad-shouldered, soft-spoken man with a gentle voice and an intimidating title. "I've been meaning to compliment you on the migration audit," he said, nodding to me. "That was clean work. Saved us a ton of post-project headaches." "Thank you," I murmured, grateful for a neutral conversation. I took a small bite of the cake. Fudge, raspberries, buttercream. Sweet, harmless, and then Vanessa appeared. Of course she did. She slid in beside me like she hadn't publicly humiliated me an hour earlier. Her dress was shimmering deep green, a contrast to the ice in her voice. She cooed, leaning in behind my shoulder. "Did no one tell you that cake has crushed almonds in the frosting?" The words didn't hit at first. They just hovered there, vague, improbable. Crushed almonds, I froze mid-chew. My throat began to itch, subtle, barely there. Then it escalated, a prickling heat, tightness, like my airway was shrinking 1 millimeter at a time. Dana looked at me. "Emily, are you okay?" I coughed, harder, my eyes started watering. "Emily?" Howard asked, alarmed. Vanessa blinked, all false concern. "You're not actually reacting, are you? I mean, it was just a little almond." My vision blurred. I dropped my plate, the cake smearing across the tablecloth as panic rushed in. I couldn't breathe. Dana grabbed my arm. "She needs help. Someone get the CEO. Emily's having an allergic reaction." The room shattered. Chairs scraped. People shouted. I heard someone scream my name, but it sounded like it came from underwater. My knees buckled. Hands steadied me from behind, then I heard his voice. "Emily, stay with me, Mr. Langford." I barely recognized him kneeling in front of me, tearing open a black case from under the dessert bar. He pulled out an epinephrine injector with the speed and certainty of someone who'd done this before. "Hold still," he said, and plunged the pen into my thigh through the fabric of my dress. I gasped, body jerking. Then pain, then air. It hit me like lightning, sudden, sharp, clearing the blockage with brutal efficiency. My lungs seized once, then opened like doors flung wide. Sirens wailed outside the hotel. The last thing I saw before the paramedics burst in was Vanessa, standing 10 feet away, her face unreadable, her champagne glass still perfectly upright in her hand. They wheeled me out past startled guests, the ballroom lights glaring above me. I was strapped to a gurney, pulse still racing, face flushed and clammy. The ambulance smelled like plastic and antiseptic. I could barely focus, but I remember gripping a paramedic's hand and rasping out one word. "Almonds." He nodded. "We're treating it as anaphylaxis. You're lucky it was caught fast." I was alive, but something inside me was dying. That whisper, Vanessa's voice in my ear, so casual, so calculated. "Did no one tell you?" She had watched me eat that cake. She had waited. I didn't need an investigation. I didn't need to analyze the probability or give her the benefit of the doubt. I knew. She had planned this. And the moment I felt my throat close, I saw her for what she really was. Not my sister. Not even my rival. Something worse. As the ambulance pulled away from the glittering hotel, leaving behind stunned coworkers and a ruined party, I knew nothing would ever be the same. Not for me, and not for her. Hospitals have their own kind of silence. Not the soft, comforting kind, but the kind that hums with fluorescent lights and makes every beep of the monitor sound like a countdown. I lay on the thin mattress, staring at the white ceiling tiles above me, counting them like they were stars I couldn't wish on. I was still in my dress. The hem crumpled around my knees, one strap slightly torn where the paramedics had clipped my seatbelt open. My shoes were gone. My legs ached from adrenaline. My throat burned. I was alive. The doctor had already come in twice, but I barely registered his words the first time. "Emily Cross." This time, I blinked and looked toward the voice. Dr. Chen. Early 40s, kind eyes, the type of gentle confidence you want in a crisis. He was reviewing my vitals on the monitor while holding a clipboard in his left hand. "You're lucky," he said, his tone soft but firm. "The CEO who administered your epinephrine, Langford, I believe, acted fast. 5 more minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation right now." I nodded slowly. "I know." He paused. "We ran your blood panels. You had a strong allergic response, textbook anaphylaxis. Traces of tree nut protein confirmed. It's good you knew your condition and that people around you acted quickly." I almost laughed. People around me acted quickly. Only one person did. Langford ran across a ballroom to save me. My sister stood and watched. Dr. Chen must have noticed something in my face. "Do you remember what you ate just before the reaction?" "A slice of cake." My voice was still hoarse. "From the dessert table. I didn't think it had anything dangerous." He made a note. We'll get your official report. The hospital may need to coordinate with the event organizers in case of contamination or mislabeling. I stared at the IV in my arm. The monitor beeped again, steady, too loud in the quiet. Can I ask, I said, voice scratchy, how much exposure, how much almond would cause this? He considered. For someone like you, sometimes just trace amounts are enough. It depends on the severity. But crushed almonds in frosting, that's not trace. He gave me a gentle look. It was real exposure, not accidental. I swallowed, hard, then nodded again. Okay. Dr. Chen patted my arm. You're stable now, rest. We'll keep you under observation for the next few hours and then we'll talk about discharge. Do you have family we can notify? The word family made my stomach twist. No, I said. They already know. He nodded, not pushing. I'll check in later. When he left, the room fell back into that hum, the kind that vibrated beneath your ribs and made your thoughts louder than they should be. Vanessa knew. She knew about my allergy. Everyone did. I carried a medical bracelet. HR had it on file. I had talked about it at birthday parties and company retreats. At our mother's funeral, I had to decline the walnut cake she brought. She knew. And she watched me eat that cake. She waited for me to swallow. She leaned in after the bite and whispered in my ear like she was sharing gossip. Not a warning, not an apology, just performance. I pulled the thin hospital blanket higher, not because I was cold, but because I felt exposed. Like I was trying to hide the bruises you can't see. Something cracked inside me that night. A quiet shift. A line that had been crossed, not just by her but by me too, because I'd allowed her to humiliate me. I had shrugged off the little jabs, the underhanded compliments, the way she claimed every room the moment I walked into it. I had called it sibling stuff. I'd laughed it off in front of coworkers, told HR it was just Vanessa being Vanessa. But tonight, she didn't just mock me. She didn't just undermine me. She poisoned me. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't rationalize it. I couldn't shrink myself small enough to explain it away. I stared at the blank wall across from me. The bouquet someone had left in the hallway must have been for another patient. I had no visitors. No family to bring flowers or sit by the bed. Not anymore. And that was the moment I realized something with chilling clarity. She doesn't see me as her sister. She sees me as competition. And I was done playing that game quietly. By Monday morning, I was back in the office, but not really present. The fluorescent lights felt sharper than usual. My ID badge beeped against the sensor with a hollow echo. I walked through the glass doors of Langford Analytics and felt every pair of eyes that darted away the moment I looked up. Whispers had already started. Some of them were barely disguised. Did you hear about the ambulance? I thought she just got sick. I heard it was an allergy, like bad. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth was growing roots without me. In my inbox was an all-staff email marked high priority. Subject: Food Safety and Incident Report from Holiday Party to all employees. Following a serious allergic reaction during our holiday party, HR is conducting an internal review of food protocols and seeking witness accounts. If you attended the dessert portion of the event and observed anything relevant, including preparation, serving, or ingredient labeling, please complete the attached anonymous form. We are taking this matter seriously. Your cooperation is appreciated. Dana Willis, HR manager. There it was. The moment Vanessa probably never saw coming. I opened the form out of habit. It was short but sharp. Specific fields asked whether the witness heard any mention of allergens, if anyone made jokes or comments about food, and whether employees knew about my allergy prior to the event. The last question made me pause. Do you believe the incident could have been avoided? My hand hovered over the mouse. I wasn't filling it out, I was the victim, but the question chilled me. It made something clear: they weren't brushing this under the rug. And neither was I, Emily. I looked up to see Dana herself standing outside my office door, tablet in hand, blazer crisp, expression neutral. We'd like to meet for a few minutes, she said, stepping inside. Of course, I said, forcing my voice steady. We sat across from each other in the conference room. The blinds were down, the air was too still. Dana gave me a careful smile. First of all, I'm glad you're okay. That must have been terrifying. It was, I said simply. She nodded. I want you to know we're treating this seriously. Mr. Langford already informed us of the emergency. The vendor was vetted, but the desserts came from a third-party supplier. Vanessa coordinated directly. My heart thudded. Directly? I didn't know that, I said. She submitted an expense form, Dana explained. That's what flagged it. She handled the dessert portions separately, citing surprise holiday flair. But HR wasn't looped in about ingredients and no allergen list was provided. I leaned back slowly, absorbing it. So no one double-checked the food. We usually rely on department heads for final approval, but clearly that process broke down. I said nothing. Dana glanced at her tablet. Did you hear anyone mention nuts or allergens before you ate the cake? Yes, I said, after I took a bite. Vanessa leaned in and told me it had almonds, as if she'd forgotten to mention it earlier. Dana blinked. She told you after? I nodded. She paused. I need to ask this directly. Do you believe Vanessa knew about your allergy? I met her gaze. She's my sister. She's known since we were kids. It's on file with HR, and I've mentioned it in front of her at dozens of events. Dana's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. Thank you, she said quietly. That aligns with what others have started saying. What others? I asked, pulse quickening. She hesitated. You're not alone, Emily. Several employees have submitted reports. Some overheard her comment at the dessert table. One said she made a joke earlier in the night about you being allergic to fun and responsibility. I almost laughed. Bitterly. She was mocking me all evening, I said. Dana offered a small nod. We've also recovered security footage from the catering area. If needed, we'll escalate this to compliance. I let the silence stretch. For the first time since that night, I felt the ground steady beneath me. I wasn't invisible, people saw, and more importantly, people believed me. That night, the apartment felt colder than usual. Not because of the temperature, our building's heating system had always been dependable, but because of the silence that pressed down on every corner. Heavy, suffocating, waiting. Vanessa came home late, as if timing her return for when she thought I'd be asleep. I wasn't. I was sitting on the edge of the couch, still in my work clothes, hands folded in my lap like I didn't trust them to stay steady if I moved. The lights were low, but I didn't need much to see her face when she walked in. She froze when she saw me. Oh, she muttered, dropping her keys too hard into the bowl by the door. You're up. I said nothing. She peeled off her coat with practiced flair, like she was on a runway no one else asked to watch. Then, without even looking at me, she tossed it carelessly across the back of the couch, my side of the couch, and headed straight to the kitchen. Clink, clink, ice cubes in a glass. She poured herself something amber. She wasn't in a hurry to speak. And then she did. You didn't have to make it a whole thing, she said flatly, like we were talking about spilled coffee, not my near-death experience. My breath caught. A whole thing, she turned around, leaning on the counter, holding her glass like it made her more grounded. You know HR is doing interviews now. Langford pulled me into a meeting with Dana this morning. I had to sit there and defend myself over a cake. I stared at her, stunned by the pettiness, by the complete absence of remorse. You watched me nearly die, I said, barely above a whisper. Vanessa rolled her eyes and took a sip. Oh my God, you're being so dramatic. I didn't make you eat it. I didn't force it into your mouth. My heart pounded. You didn't stop me either, I said. You waited until I'd already taken a bite, and then you whispered it to me, like it was gossip, not a warning, she shrugged. I thought you'd notice. You usually sniff everything like a bloodhound. I stood slowly, not trusting myself to stay calm. This isn't a joke, Vanessa. Well, it sure feels like you're trying to make it one, she snapped. You got all the attention again. CEO carried you out like some kind of hero. Everyone's talking about poor, brave Emily now. The words hit harder than I expected. She hadn't said sorry, not once. You think I wanted that? I asked, voice rising. You think I staged an allergic reaction at a corporate party just to steal attention from you? Her eyes narrowed. You're always playing the victim. Ever since we were kids. You act like you're the one who's always been hurt. But maybe some of us are tired of living in your shadow. There it was, the truth she never said out loud. The rot underneath the fake smiles. I don't have a shadow, Vanessa, I said. I have scars, you just never bothered to look close enough to tell the difference. She scoffed, turning her back to me, draining her glass and slamming it down on the counter. You're just mad because people finally saw you vulnerable. For once, you weren't the polished, perfect little golden girl. You were the girl gasping for air on a ballroom floor. I froze. The words sliced through me with surgical precision. Cold, calculated, and then I understood. She hadn't just resented me, she wanted to break me, publicly, fatally if that's what it took. I walked to the hallway without another word. I didn't slam the door when I reached my room, I didn't scream. I just closed it quietly behind me, sat on the edge of my bed, and stared at the floor. The silence in the apartment had changed. Now it was war. 2 days after our confrontation in the apartment, the email arrived. It was short. No subject line. Just a timestamp and a meeting invite from Dana with a single note. Please stop by my office this morning. Confidential. My heart thudded against my ribs. Not panic, not fear, just readiness. I didn't knock. She waved me in with the kind of expression people wear when they're about to change your life in quiet, irreversible ways. Close the door, Emily. I did. Dana gestured to the seat across from her. No tablet this time, just a manila folder resting on her desk like it was holding a secret with teeth. We've found something, she said. It flagged it this morning. I sat slowly. Okay, she opened the folder. As part of the internal review, we reviewed browser activity from the company laptop assigned to Vanessa Cross. Our compliance policy allows for limited monitoring of devices, especially when they're used to coordinate external vendors. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She slid a printed sheet across the table toward me. At the top, search history, Vanessa Cross, December 12, 2025, the day before the party. The first line made my throat go dry. How much nut causes allergic reaction then? Mild allergy symptoms versus anaphylaxis. Nut allergy cake ingredients. Does buttercream contain almonds? How fast does epinephrine work? Symptoms of nut allergy in adults. I stared at the page like it might rearrange itself, like the words might soften if I blinked hard enough. But they didn't. Dana's voice cut gently through the fog. These weren't casual searches. They were all within a 15-minute window. I looked up at her. She researched how to hurt me. Dana gave a small, sorrowful nod. We can't draw legal conclusions, but yes, this is extremely concerning, especially given the timing and the circumstances. And she used her work laptop to do it, I asked, barely able to believe the stupidity. Yes, during company hours, on the office Wi-Fi, it's all traceable. There was a pause, heavy, hanging between us like an invisible verdict. What happens now? I asked. Dana folded her hands on the desk. As of this morning, Vanessa has been placed on administrative leave, pending further review. Paid for now, but suspended from accessing company systems. She's not to come to the building or contact you. She knows, I asked. Dana nodded. I told her myself. She wasn't surprised. That last part pierced deeper than I expected. She knew we'd find it, I whispered. She knew, Dana said, voice low. And Emily, we're getting close. I stared down at the printed page one more time. Not because I doubted it, but because seeing it in black and white, spelled out in cold digital footprints, made it real in a way even my gasping lungs couldn't. Vanessa didn't just want to humiliate me. She planned it. She Googled it. She coordinated the dessert vendor. She bypassed the HR allergy list. She watched me bite into that cake with full knowledge of what was inside. And when I started choking, she stood there, glass in hand, smile in place, and waited. I stood up from the chair slowly, steadying myself against the table. Dana gave me a look I hadn't seen before. Not pity, not concern, respect. You've been incredibly composed through all of this, she said. I managed a small smile. I've had years of practice. Dana nodded once. We'll be in touch soon. But for what it's worth, I think people are finally seeing what they should have seen a long time ago. I left her office and walked past rows of cubicles filled with people pretending not to stare. But I didn't shrink. I walked taller. Because now the truth wasn't just mine to carry. It was documented, dated, stored in the server. And Vanessa's mask was starting to crack. The skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a jagged outline of glass and ambition stretched above the lake. From this high up, the city looked almost peaceful, like the chaos below couldn't touch us. But inside the corner conference room, peace was a fiction. Come in, Emily, said Mr. Langford, motioning me toward one of the leather chairs across from him. His voice was calm, practiced. The kind you hear in investor briefings and crisis press releases. He wore his navy suit like armor, crisp and deliberate, but his eyes gave him away. Tired, guarded, calculating. I sat down slowly, setting my hands in my lap. I'd expected this meeting, just not so soon. He didn't waste time. First, let me say again, I'm relieved you're okay. Thank you, I replied. My voice had that strange quietness it always carried when I was holding back too much. He nodded, clasping his hands in front of him. There's been a lot of movement in the last few days. HR's report, the search history, staff interviews, it's clear something serious happened and we're taking it seriously. I held his gaze. I'm glad to hear that. He leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. That said, there's something else to consider now. Here it comes. The internal investigation will run its course, he continued, but we both know this situation could spill outside the company. Meaning, I asked, though I already knew. Media, clients, investors, he said plainly. A story like this, even whispers, could impact shareholder confidence, not to mention the potential liability if this escalates to legal action. I didn't respond. He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. I'm not here to pressure you. I'm asking, not ordering, if we can handle this quietly. Internally, no press, no lawsuit. Vanessa's suspension can quietly shift to resignation. We'll protect your record, we'll reinforce new safety protocols, and you'll have our full support privately. Privately, there was the key word, no headlines, no noise, no accountability beyond the boardroom walls. I studied him. He wasn't malicious, just strategic, corporate. Why me? I asked. Why not talk to Vanessa? He didn't blink. Because she's not the threat to our reputation. You are, the words should have stung. But instead, they settled in my chest with a strange warmth. I was the threat, because I knew the truth, because people believed me now, because I was no longer the one backing down. I sat back in the chair, feeling the cold edge of resolve settle in my voice. For now, I said evenly. We'll keep it quiet. I need time to think and to heal. Langford exhaled, almost relieved. Of course, I appreciate that. But, I added, eyes fixed on his, this isn't over. His gaze sharpened, but he nodded slowly. Understood. He stood and offered his hand. I shook it, calm, professional, but when I pulled away it felt like shedding a layer of who I used to be. Outside the conference room, the office buzzed with quiet energy. People glanced up from their screens as I passed, but no one spoke. The air had changed. I could feel it in the way space opened in the hallways, the way heads dipped with something like respect or fear. I walked back to my desk and sat down, breathing in slowly. He wanted quiet, but Vanessa tried to kill me, and the only thing louder than her silence now was mine. The last place I wanted to be was back in my parents' living room. It was too warm, too familiar. The scent of cinnamon potpourri still clung to the curtains, and the floor creaked in the exact same spot near the coffee table, like time had stopped here, even as the rest of the world shattered around me. My mother sat in her usual chair, wrapped in the knit blanket she'd had since I was a kid. She clutched her tea like it was anchoring her to the moment. My father stood stiffly by the fireplace, one hand braced against the mantel like he wasn't sure if he should be standing or sitting. I hadn't been home in over a month. Not since Thanksgiving, not since before everything cracked. The silence in the room wasn't comfortable, it was laced with dread. I had told them I needed to talk. I think they assumed it was another work update. Maybe something about Vanessa's suspension they'd already heard in pieces through family whispers. But they didn't know, not really. I didn't bother with pleasantries. She tried to kill me, I said, my voice steady, flat. My mother blinked slowly, her mug halfway to her lips. My father frowned. Emily, what are you talking about? At the company party, I said, folding my hands in my lap. The chocolate cake I ate had crushed almonds. My allergy file was on record. HR didn't approve the dessert vendor. Vanessa handled it herself. Sweetheart, my mom started, but I shook my head. She told me after I took a bite. She waited, then whispered in my ear like it was gossip. And while I was choking, she just stood there. The mug in my mother's hands trembled slightly. She knew, I said, my voice cracking now. She knew I ended up in the hospital. Langford had to use an EpiPen on me on the ballroom floor. My father's color drained. His mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't believe it at first, I continued. Even after the hospital, even after the HR investigation started, I kept telling myself it was a mistake. That maybe I'd imagined the way she said it, the timing, the way she smirked. But then, I pulled out the printed copy of Vanessa's search history, the one Dana had quietly slipped me after our meeting. I laid it on the coffee table, right next to the coaster with the faded picture of me and Vanessa as kids. How much nut causes allergic reaction? Mild symptoms versus severe anaphylaxis. How fast does an EpiPen work? My father stared. My mother let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. She could have killed you, my dad whispered. He sat down heavily, like gravity had doubled on him. I think she wanted to hurt me, I said. Maybe not kill me, maybe not on purpose, but she wanted a scene, a collapse, something to finally prove I wasn't so perfect. My mom was crying now, quietly, like she didn't want to draw attention to it. "We believe you," she said, her voice trembling. "Emily, we believe you." It should have comforted me, but all I could think about was how long it took for that sentence to exist. I stood up, brushing my hands together like I needed to shake something off. "I don't know what happens next," I said. "I'm not asking you to pick sides, I just needed you to know. I needed to say it out loud to someone who might still care about both of us." My father finally looked up. "We do care, Emily, more than you know," I nodded. But the truth hung there between us, too big for this cozy room, too sharp to be softened by tea or apologies. And it wasn't going away. The law office smelled like leather chairs and old paper, serious, deliberate. Consequences had a scent, I decided. I arrived 10 minutes early. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes late. Of course she did. She burst through the glass door with her usual flair, sunglasses still on, coat half buttoned, irritation leading the way. Her lawyer, a thin man with nervous eyes, trailed behind her like an apology. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, dropping into the chair across from me. "I have a meeting in an hour." I didn't respond. My attorney, Margaret Lewis, gray hair, steel spine, slid a neatly stacked packet across the table toward Vanessa. "Ms. Cross," Margaret said calmly, "this is a formal demand letter. It outlines medical expenses, ongoing therapy costs, lost wages, and punitive damages related to gross negligence and intentional endangerment." Vanessa laughed, actually laughed. She flipped the packet once, twice, then shoved it away like it was contaminated. "You're seriously suing your own sister," she scoffed, finally pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Have you completely lost your mind?" I leaned forward slightly. Not angry, not shaking. "I'm holding someone accountable," I said quietly. Her smile twitched. "For what? A misunderstanding? A cake?" "A documented allergic reaction," Margaret cut in smoothly, "with premeditation indicated by digital evidence." Vanessa shot her a glare. "This doesn't leave this room," she snapped. "You hear me?" Margaret didn't flinch. "If you refuse to engage in settlement discussions, we'll proceed with filing. Criminal negligence will be evaluated separately." Vanessa's eyes flicked back to me, searching, calculating, looking for the old version of me, the one who would soften, fold, apologize for making things uncomfortable. She didn't find her. "You're blowing up the family," she said, lower now. "Mom's a mess, Dad can't sleep. Is this really what you want?" I held her gaze. What I wanted was to breathe. Silence, her jaw tightened. "You think you're better than me?" "No," I said. "I think I survived you." That landed. She stood abruptly, chair scraping loud against the floor. "This isn't over," I nodded once. "I know." She stormed out, heels sharp against marble, leaving behind a room full of quiet and paperwork that finally told the truth. Margaret turned to me. "You did well." I exhaled for the first time in hours. Outside, the city moved like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had, because this wasn't revenge. This was the moment I stopped absorbing the damage and started returning it to its source. It was supposed to be just another meeting. I'd been called to the 10th floor conference room, same table, same view, same hushed tension. But this time the air felt thick. No casual greetings, no coffee cups. Just Mr. Langford at the head of the table, flanked by 2 members of legal and Dana from HR, her expression unreadable. I sat down, palms damp against my skirt. I didn't speak. Neither did they. Langford opened a folder and looked straight at me. "Emily, thank you for coming." I nodded. He glanced at the others, then continued. "The investigation is complete, and we found something. Final." I held my breath. Dana shifted a document toward me. I didn't touch it. Langford spoke carefully, as though each word had weight. The catering invoice Vanessa submitted included a personal note, one she typed in herself when coordinating the order. It read, "No need to loop in HR. I'll handle this privately. I've got the food list covered." He let the words settle. My chest tightened. "She also dismissed 2 internal emails from the HR catering liaison," Dana added, one of which specifically mentioned reviewing the employee allergy database. She replied, and I quote, "That's unnecessary, I know what I'm doing." I looked down at the document. My name was there, highlighted on the official allergy list. Clear, undeniable. "She ignored it," I said. Langford nodded grimly. "She didn't just ignore it, she actively bypassed safety protocols designed to prevent exactly what happened, and she left a paper trail." Silence stretched. He leaned back in his chair, the city skyline behind him. This wasn't poor judgment, it wasn't a misstep, the evidence is overwhelming, this was premeditated negligence at best. I could feel my hands tremble in my lap, but I kept them still. My voice didn't shake. Now you know, I said quietly. Langford exhaled, the sound laced with something like shame. We do, Dana added. Next steps are in motion. This goes beyond HR now. The board will be informed and we've recommended immediate termination under cause. I said nothing. I didn't need to. For so long, the burden had been mine alone to notice, to survive, to carry the truth in silence. But now it lived on paper, in emails, in voice memos, and investigation summaries. It no longer relied on belief, it was fact. Langford's expression softened just slightly. You've shown a level of restraint I doubt many others could have managed. I met his eyes. It wasn't restraint, it was survival. He nodded. The meeting ended without ceremony. No shaking hands, no final words. Just the quiet closing of folders and the collective understanding that someone had crossed a line, and that I had refused to let it be invisible. As I stepped out of the room, my breath caught in my chest, not from fear but from the first taste of air that felt truly mine. The courtroom was colder than it should have been. Everything echoed, heels on marble, coughs into sleeves, the soft shuffle of papers and whispered disbelief. But I wasn't cold. I sat upright at the plaintiff's table in my navy blazer, back straight, hands still. My fingers rested on the edge of the table, just touching the binder that held every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Vanessa sat across from me, arms crossed, lips pressed into a line. No makeup today, she didn't look sorry, she looked bored. The trial had lasted just 2 days. Everything had already been investigated, documented, verified. The cake, the catering bypass, the search history, the emails, the emergency response. It wasn't a debate. It was a reckoning. Margaret stood for closing remarks with the grace of someone who had done this 100 times but still carried fire in her bones. This was not an unfortunate accident, she told the judge. It was a deliberate chain of choices made by someone who knew better and chose to ignore every safety net. My client almost died. That should not be a matter of internal policy, it's a matter of accountability. Vanessa's lawyer didn't have much to say. He repeated words like miscommunication and intent unknown. But every time he glanced at the jury, even he seemed unconvinced. Then it was done. The judge didn't need long. She adjusted her glasses and looked directly at Vanessa. This court finds the defendant liable for gross negligence and willful misconduct. The damages awarded to the plaintiff totaled $220,000, covering medical bills, ongoing therapy, lost wages, and punitive restitution. Murmurs rippled across the room. The judge added, almost as an afterthought, Ms. Cross, you are fortunate this case did not include criminal charges. Let this be a moment of clarity. I turned to look at Vanessa. She didn't stand, didn't blink. Just sat there, arms still crossed, jaw locked tight. Not a single word of apology, no remorse, but it didn't matter. Because for the first time she couldn't control the narrative. She couldn't mock or manipulate or charm her way through the consequence. She was just seen, and I stood up. I didn't look back as I left the courtroom. Margaret gathered our things, but I didn't wait. I just walked through the heavy oak doors, down the courthouse steps, and into the crisp winter air that hit my face like a baptism. The sky was pale gray. Streetlights blinked on one by one. The city buzzed around me as if none of them knew what had just happened inside those walls. But I knew. I had walked in with doubt still shadowing my steps, and walked out with something far more valuable than revenge. I walked out with dignity, with truth that no longer needed proving, with justice that had a dollar amount, but also something quieter, deeper, peace. And as I stood on the sidewalk exhaling clouds of breath into the December sky, I let one final thought settle. She tried to destroy me in a room full of people. Now she had to live with being exposed in front of them too. 2 days after the ruling, Vanessa was officially gone. No going away party. No HR memo. No good luck in your next chapter email. Just a quiet click of her badge being deactivated and her name disappearing from the company directory. Her title, Senior Strategic Liaison, had already been reassigned. And her office, empty, desk cleared, walls bare. The framed photo of us at a childhood birthday party, the one she used to keep just for show, was gone too. I didn't see her leave, but I heard the aftermath. She called it a witch hunt. She said you engineered the whole thing. She left screaming about office politics and jealous siblings. But no one said it with sympathy. There was a shift in the air, subtle but real, the kind that happens after a thunderstorm. Stillness that wasn't silence, just the absence of dread. People didn't avoid my gaze anymore. A few even nodded in the hallways. One woman from finance, a woman I barely knew, passed me in the break room and murmured, "Good for you." I didn't reply. I just smiled faintly and poured my coffee. That afternoon, I was called into Mr. Langford's office. His tone was different this time, no longer measured and cautious, but warm, respectful. And for the first time, it felt like he was talking to me as an equal. "We've reviewed your work over the last year, and frankly, we're impressed, not just with your leadership during the system's migration, but your resilience in an impossible situation." I stayed quiet, listening. "We're promoting you to head of data operations, effective immediately." "You've earned it." I blinked once, then nodded. "Thank you." He leaned forward slightly. "I know the last few weeks have been heavy. I want to make sure we're supporting you, not just rewarding you." "I appreciate that," I said, then hesitated. "But I want something clear just once." Langford looked at me, eyebrows raised. "I didn't do this to hurt Vanessa," I said. "This wasn't a vendetta, it wasn't revenge." He nodded slowly. "Then what was it?" I met his gaze. "Safety and truth." He didn't say anything right away. Just exhaled and leaned back in his chair like that answer had reached something deeper than he expected. I stood up and shook his hand, a clean gesture. No power games, no masks. Outside his office the floor felt brighter, not because of lighting, but because the shadow that had lingered behind every meeting, every hallway whisper, every eye roll disguised as a joke was gone. Vanessa wasn't here anymore. And her absence wasn't grief, it was clarity. Her desk was silent, and I didn't miss her. The ballroom was dressed in gold this time, not the icy winter theme of last year's disaster, no snowflake centerpieces, no frost-patterned banners. This year's corporate gala shimmered with warm lights and soft music. There was laughter, the kind that wasn't forced, and a quiet pulse of pride humming through the room like a current. It had been a year, 12 long months since the night I couldn't breathe. 11 since I stood in a courtroom with shaking hands and steady eyes. 10 since I took over the data operations team and rewrote the department from the ground up. And now, here I was again, standing under chandeliers, surrounded by people in cocktail dresses and pressed suits, holding a glass of sparkling water as someone tapped the mic on stage. "Tonight, we're introducing a new tradition," said Langford from the podium, his voice echoing gently. "Annual leadership recognition. Not just for innovation, but for courage, integrity, and lasting impact on company culture." He glanced at me then, a small, knowing smile tugging at his mouth. "This year's recipient has done more than build strong systems and streamline our analytics. She turned a moment of crisis into a movement, one that now protects everyone in this room." Applause broke out. Real, enthusiastic. I stood when he called my name, every step to the stage measured but light. As I took the award, an elegant glass sculpture etched with my name, I saw the placard below, "Emily Cross, Leadership in Safety and Accountability." I wasn't shaking this time. Back at my table, a young intern, new, bright-eyed, probably barely out of college, leaned forward. "Can I ask something?" she said softly. "Was it hard, standing up to your sister like that?" I looked at her. She meant well. She didn't know the whole story. She'd only heard the version passed down in HR onboarding or hallway anecdotes. She probably didn't even remember Vanessa's name. But the question hung there, quiet and honest, so I answered. "It was harder not to." The intern blinked. "Really?" I nodded. "Living with injustice, even if it's subtle, even if no one else sees it, hurts more than confronting it. The silence takes more out of you than the fight." She nodded slowly, her admiration unhidden. Across the room, Dana raised her glass to me. I returned the gesture, a small smile playing at my lips. Not everything had healed. There were still nights I replayed the moment Vanessa whispered in my ear. Still mornings where I wondered if I could have done something sooner, said something louder. But the difference now was, I had spoken. I had said no to being minimized, to being mocked, to nearly dying for someone else's bitterness. And in doing that, I had made space. Not just for myself, but for the people who'd once felt small too. This ballroom wasn't haunted anymore. It was reclaimed. Every breath I took here was mine.